being back up here 48 hours, after the game on Saturday, and it's a lot of evaluation, a lot of, looking for answers for what led to the disappointing outcome that we had. And it's probably easy to sit here and tell you the things we did well or how hard our guys tried, but that doesn't matter, right? Is we gotta become a more consistent team, and that starts with being consistent individuals. Consistency, I believe, is what wins or loses games when you have two good opponents competing against each other. The only way to become more consistent is we have to refuse to tolerate habits and a performance that isn't to the standard that we've set for our program. So, it's always going to start with me and making sure that I have to always evaluate the things that, I tolerate as the head coach, and what we all tolerate from each other in terms of our habits and the way we practice and the way we prepare and the way we go about things. We weren't consistent enough in all three phases. On offense, we got to be better, and we got to be perfect in those short yardage situations. We got to score touchdowns in the red zone. And again, that goes back to being consistent, all right, in what we do. Special teams, we got to make every rep count, right? We can be good at dominant at 90% of the game, but that 10% that matters the most, we got to execute, right? And it goes back to being consistent in everything we do. And then defensively, what we can't do is let a bad play turn into an explosive play, right? And that's what you see on Saturday. What typically is sometimes a bad play were explosive plays. I think they had over 200 yards on 6 plays, which is a result of explosive plays that can't happen. And we've had to figure out why those explosive plays occurred, all right? And I can get up here and say it's execution, and it is. But, what does a lack of execution come down to? And it can be a lack of focus. It can be a lack of proper technique, a lack of understanding what's expected, a personnel issue where you're asking someone to do something that they can't do consistently. And so all those things are responsibility of us as coaches. It falls on us as coaches to make sure that our guys can execute what we're asking them to execute on a consistent basis. So we got to get back to work, focus on the things we control. Every year the journey's different, every season, and this is no different, right? And so my job is to make sure that this team is heading in the right direction, and the only way to ensure that is we got to continue to find the right answers and practice our plans in a way that ensures we improve and continuously be a more consistent team. So as we get ready for this opportunity Saturday versus Purdue, this team plays hard, and you can watch the film, you can watch even some of the schematic things that happened when they were at UNLV, and Barry Odom gets his players to play extremely hard, confident, and it's a belief in their head coach, and it's something they've instilled in their culture, and they're going to be ready to go this Saturday. So we got to make sure that we understand the challenge, but more importantly, the opportunity we have as a program. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Back row on your right, Drew Mentok.
Jeremiah Love easily exceeded his career high in terms of carries. Was that always kind of part of the game plan, and how do you think he handled that increased workload?
Yeah, we were intentional about wanting to put the ball in his hands. So much of that is determined, one, by play calling, but two, by the amount of plays that you have as an offense. And what you saw is we were able to have some longer play drives, and with more plays, it's more opportunities to get the ball in his hands, and he did a great job, and he always does when you get the ball in his hands.
And after the game, he said everyone needs to point the finger at themselves. How important will that level of individual accountability be in terms of being more consistent and trying to go 1-0 every week?
I think that's what great coaches do, right? Great coaches don't pass blame. They don't say it's the player's fault. They look at themselves and say, how can I find a way to fix this? Well, I think great players do the same thing. They don't look at if they would have done this or he would have done that or if our coach would have done this. They say, what can I do to make this thing better? What can I do to help this team improve? And great teams do that. They look at themselves, especially when you don't get the results you want. When you do get the results you want, you look at others. But when you have failure, great coaches, great players, great teams look at themselves and hold themselves accountable.
Third row on your left, Pete Byrne.
Hey, Marcus, you just said that in search of consistency, you can't tolerate bad habits. I'm wondering, have you identified, in looking back, some habits that you want to change with the group?
Well, I think back to, why, if you look at some of the explosive plays defensively, as I just mentioned, you got to look at yourself and say, okay, you could say this guy didn't have his eyes where they needed to be. Well, you can say it's the player's fault, or you can say, okay, is there times in practice that maybe your player didn't have his eyes in the right spot and the outcome might have been different, but we tolerated it, right? If a guy had a mental error on a play, he went the wrong way, you could make yourself feel better and say, well, that's his fault. We did it right one time in practice. Or you can say, did we do it enough till we couldn't get it wrong? And that's what I really am talking about when I say tolerating different things. Hey, if a guy gets beat deep on a big play pass, if he's not playing with the proper technique, did we stress him enough with speed in practice so that he understands the velocity that you have to be able to play with the proper technique? And so those are the things that when I say we have to self-evaluate what we tolerate in practice and what we tolerate as a program, those are the examples that I'm talking about.
As you evaluate that, do you feel like you need to spend more time on the defensive side, given your background?
I think more importantly, like as a head coach, it's as a leader, it's important to wear the hat that's necessary in that moment, no matter if it's offense, defense, special teams, recruiting, anything, right? It's being able to put on the hat that's necessary at this moment. I spend a lot of time with our defense. That's obviously where my background is, and I'll continuously do it. Will I spend more time? Maybe. If that's what's necessary, I will. I'll spend more time there. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we improve and we have a performance that we believe is the standard of Notre Dame football.
Second row on your right, Tom Noy.
Marcus, when you go back and look at the tape, do you look at it and say you're close, or you're just making too many errors or not enough plays at the key times to be successful?
Yeah, we're 4 points away from being, 5 points away from being 2-0. So, are we close? Yeah, but we're not close enough, right? And that's where I always say we can't let the outcome, good or bad, distract us from the reality of where we're at as a team. Like, we have to get better. No matter if we would have won that game or lost, and there's plenty of room to get better in all three phases, and that's what we got to do.
The core of this group had to play playoff football, win or go home football for 14 straight weeks last year. What's the biggest challenge, or what's the biggest concern of having to do it now for basically the next 10?
What's the biggest concern is how do we make sure that we're focused on getting this first one, and that's the only thing we control. We got one game that's guaranteed right in front of us, and that's Purdue. But we got one day that we have, and that's right now. And so how do we maximize this day, this moment, these meetings, this walkthrough? How do we make the most? Because that's going to get us to where we want to go and really where we want to be for Saturday. And that's always been my message, is stay in the moment, because we got to win these moments. The only way to win the moment, you got to be right in the moment. And that's what matters, is not worrying about the next opponent after that, not worrying about, we got to go undefeated. That's wasting time, as I always say, on an uncertain future. Don't waste time. Focus on the things that are guaranteed you, and that's right what we have right now.
Front row on your left, Tyler Horka.
After the game, you harped on execution a lot, not necessarily the calls or the scheme. Going back, watching the film, did you see it the same way, or where are you guys at with the calls in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's the execution of what we're asking them to do. And if we're asking them to do things they can't execute, then we got to evaluate what we're asking them to do. And so, like I said, it's not a call. It's not a scheme. There's no perfect call, no perfect scheme. It's the ability to execute. And that, as I said, like, we've spent time figuring out the lack of execution, right? If the answer was just call something different, we would do that. But it's like, okay, this is what we called, this is why we called it, why did it fail? And that's where you got to really eval what is the core of the failure in the execution, and that's what we've been doing.
Is there anything to learning a new system from a new defensive coordinator? Or where do you feel like the guys are at in the transition from Al Golden to Chris Ash now that you have actually played a couple games?
Yeah. Again, there's some new wrinkles, but it's not a new system. But it's not where we need to be in terms of the performance, in terms of the execution of what we're asking them to do. So that's what we got to continuously find ways to improve that, you know, and it's easy to say it's one person or the new coordinator. It's all of us in terms of our players, our coaches, myself, evaluating where the lack of execution came, why is it happening, and what each of us can do to fix it.
Up the middle on the right, Tim O'Malley.
No, you said you didn't want to list what you did well, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So sticking with the defense, what are a couple aspects of the defense you believe have performed well over 2 games and maybe much more important that can evolve over the next 2 months into strengths for the team, like you had obvious defensive strengths last season?
And we came out of the locker room, started fast. You know, I thought we did a better job stopping the run this week. You know, I don't spend a lot of time on the things we did well. It's really focus on the things we got to improve. We got a takeaway this week. Leonard got an interception, and we obviously didn't have any the week before. And so, you know, I like to focus on the things we got to improve on.
With the Wildcat, or whatever you call it, with Jeremiah Love, what is, other than Jeremiah Love getting the ball, what is kind of something you feel can improve there going forward? I don't know how you guys define short yards. You're probably 50%.
Yeah.
But what do you kind of, how can that become a strength going forward? I know Riley Leonard was automatic, so how can it just be a strength for the offense going forward?
Well, I think anytime you run the quarterback, right, you get an extra hat in the box. You give your offense an extra hat, right, instead of having a quarterback that you know isn't going to run. It gives the defense a +1 defender is what you call it. And so, but you got to know that each team isn't going to adjust to that formation the same. And so we got to be creative in terms of our short yardage plan. That wasn't just a short yardage plan. That was a plan of being able to run the ball. And, you know, a lot of credit goes to Coach Denbrock, Coach Rudolph, who's very involved in the run game, of being creative in terms of let's find different ways, 1, to run the ball, but 2, get the ball into the hands of our playmakers. And so we'll see what this week presents, but I was really pleased with the creativity, but also the execution for the most part of the Wildcat plan.
Second row on your left, Tyler James.
Marcus, sticking with the offense, would you evaluate the play of the offensive line this past week? Where was their improvement, and what's left in terms of improvement?
Much improved from week 1 to week 2. The execution was where we expected to be. Was it perfect? No. Well, we got to continue to enhance it, but they did a great job protecting the quarterback and also, you know, covering up some of those games and twists and stunts that D-line and their defense presents. It's an aggressive, challenging defense that I think our offensive line did a really good job with.
In terms of allowing explosive plays, I think safeties are often associated with that because they're sort of the last line of defense. Is there consistent? Are the issues consistent in terms of what's going wrong, or are they sort of something else keeps popping up in different ways that you guys have to figure out?
Yeah, I think as you look at the six big plays, it wasn't just one thing. When I talked about 6 plays in my opener that, contributed to 200-plus yards, we had eye discipline on one, technique, schematic execution, can this person perform what we're asking him to do consistently? It was a couple different things that I believe were the issues. It wasn't just one thing, one person, but it was multiple different things. And that's a good and a bad thing, right? And so we have to fix it. We got to correct it, and we've identified it. We have a plan to get it corrected. Now we got to do it.
Up the middle on the left, Sean Stiers.
Hey, Marcus, you talked last week a little about sort of from a defensive standpoint, trying to play more to the strengths of your guys, I guess. So as you look at the conflux of a new defensive coordinator, and that means some new philosophies and things like that, are you still kind of working toward that, getting back to maybe playing more of their strengths?
Yeah, I mean, there's things I believe our DBs do well. There's things I believe our linebackers do well, things I believe our D-line does well, but we got to group it all together, right? We can't just call certain coverages because maybe the DBs do this well, and then we understand that we're exposing maybe some pass rush and pressure on the quarterback, and we can't just blitz guys up front, or let those guys go loose and put our DBs on islands consistently. So, as I said, I think in the post game, like front and coverage have to work together, and we got to make sure that we do things our guys do well, but we got to do them together, right? And we got to marry up the front and the coverage in terms of what we're asking our guys to do. And so we have the right players. We got the right players. We got the right coaches. We got to get these guys to a point where they understand the expectations and they're perfect in their alignments, and that will lead to the execution that we want.
When Chris,
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
When Chris Ash came in this offseason, he talked a lot about, I'm not running my defense, I'm running the Notre Dame defense. So the Notre Dame defense that we've seen the last 2 Saturdays looks a lot different than the Notre Dame defense we've become accustomed to seeing. So whose defense is it?
The Notre Dame defense that I hear you say look different. It's the execution of what they're being asked to do, right? The overall output, I guess, is what you see that's different. It's not the structure of the defense. It's the execution of what we're asking our guys to do. And so there's new players, right? There's some new players that we gotta get them to the point that they can execute what we're asking them to do. But it's not. I don't think you're seeing a big change in terms of the structure of the tactical aspect of how we're playing defense. And so what we got to do is again evaluate what we're asking our guys to do, and then say, okay, if they can't do what we're asking them to do, either we got to change it, or we got to address it in practice in a way that they can execute exactly what we're asking them to do at the level we're asking them to do it. And so that's what we got to do. And whose defense is our defense? It's our Notre Dame football. It's my head coach, right? That's no one person's fault. It's ours.
In the back of the room, Talia Baya.
Hey, Coach. I know this is considered kind of outside noise for you, but you are 0-2, and that is the first time a team has been ranked since 1988. I was just wondering your thoughts on that, because it reflects positively on you and your team.
I'm worried about preparing this team for Saturday. I'm worried about taking some of those valuable lessons that we've learned from the first 2 weeks to help us improve as we get ready for this upcoming game. And really, that's my focus is what's right in front of us.
Okay, and when you say defense needs to elevate, what's your biggest shift you want to see from them moving forward?
Again, it's the daily practice habits, the daily preparation. It's the understanding of exactly what you're supposed to do and how to get it done. And ultimately, that's going to lead to a better performance on Saturday. But what I want to see is elevate and improve today in meetings, in conversations, and walkthroughs, and all those things that we have right in front of us.
Front row on your left, Jack Sobel.
Hey, Coach Freeman, throughout August, you had a lot of conviction on the defensive line. Like, what were you seeing in camp and throughout August that isn't happening now, and how can you kind of recapture that going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've had some conversations about it. It's a group that I believe has to be a strength for us. You know, I didn't see them playing Saturday with the velocity that maybe I saw during fall camp, and it's a discussion that we've had is like, are we asking them to do too much where they're not playing fast, right? And at the end of the day, we got to get those guys to play fast because we have the talent for sure. We got to make sure that they're executing with the velocity that we believe it takes to make the plays that we demand they make. And so I'm very confident in Coach Wash. I'm very confident in our defensive line. We just got to get them to a point where they're playing fast and playing, you know, the way that I believe they can and will play.
I think Tay Johnson got 50-plus snaps in this game. How would you evaluate his performance, especially with Adon having to miss the first half of the next game?
I was pleased. I thought Tay did a good job being out there, made some plays, some really good open field tackles, made some plays on the ball. He's a talented individual, and he was going to get more no matter what, but especially with Adon being down a half, like he's going to have more on his plate, and he'll do just fine with it.
Front row on your right, John Bryce.
Marcus, you mentioned earlier it's your job to make sure that things are headed in the right direction. What have you seen from your team and players since Saturday night that sort of encourages you, that lets you know things are headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen enough, especially the leaders, that they're as hungry and as eager to get back to work as anybody. And this is the time that leadership shows. Like, if you're a leader, you're built for this moment, right? You know, it's not always great, right? And leadership really reveals itself in difficult times. And so I'm as confident in this group of young people and this group of coaches that I was before week one. And they're going to make sure that this thing goes in the right direction.
You said you want to challenge them to elevate and improve, even beginning in meetings and beyond. How do you challenge yourself and your coaching staff? How can you guys elevate and improve?
Well, I think it starts with, as what I said in the opener, is like, what are we willing to tolerate, right? It's like, what am I as the head coach willing to tolerate? And I got to demand, you know, that everything that we've set as our standards are met, and that's what I got to continue to do. If I need to be involved in more in a certain area, I will, and I am. And so I think it's everybody starting with a look at themselves and saying, how do I as an individual get better, right? And then how do I lead the people that I'm in charge of leading in a way that's elevated from where we were the day before. And so I start with myself and say, okay, who am I leading? I'm leading this entire football program, right? I'm leading the coaches. And the coaches start with themselves and say, okay, my position group or my unit. And but I think it starts with looking at yourself first and saying, where do I need to improve, and how can I lead the people that I'm in charge of leading in a way that's going to help them elevate?
Staying in the front row, Eric Hansen.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to follow up on Tim O'Malley's question about the Wildcat. What is the advantage other than Jeremiah has a jet on his back, but having him in that short yardage situation in a direct snap versus, let's say, a Kenny Minchie where then the pass is in play as well?
Well, I think, yeah, you can do a little bit of both. I think if you're truly going to commit to running the ball in that situation, then Jeremiah Love or one of our running backs is going to be a better runner than anybody with the ball in their hands. But, Kenny Minchie gives you another asset of being able to throw it and run it. And, again, C.J. Carr isn't a dud. He can run, if we need him to run. But I don't know if you love your quarterback taking those hits in some of those short yardage situations. And that's not to discredit Riley, like we didn't care about Riley, But, again, it's the creativity that you have to have, but also it's the production that you believe that package or that play is going to have. And it was pretty productive on Saturday. We'll see what wrinkles that we have for this upcoming week.
And then just with Noah being listed as questionable, who's your next option on place kicks, and how do you feel about that option?
Yeah, we'll have if Noah can't go, he's questionable right now, then we'll have a kind of a challenge, competition between Marcello and Eric Schmidt, and find ways to create a little competition this week in practice and make a decision as we go into the game, but it would be between those two guys.
Staying in the front row, Pete Sampson.
Was it in terms of C.J. Carr and Mike Denbrock working together, what was the jump they made from week 1 to week 2 in terms of, we got this look, go here, like keep an eye out for that, just in terms of like that battery, pushing forward as one unit? Yeah,
I think again, finding ways to be more black and white than gray, and hey, if there's an option here, here's the option we want you to take. And again, being more definitive on those type of situations and those plays. I think maybe week 1 there was some plays that we evaluated after the game and said, this is an option, we'd rather you do option A. And I think that's kind of what you saw a little bit more of this week.
Just overall, a couple weeks, how do you see the receiver room? Take Eli out of it, just like Malachi and Jordan and those guys. Like, how is that group progressing? What do you like from them so far?
I think it's probably in terms of the depth, right? KK had a big catch this week. Like, the depth of that room is as deep as it's been since I've been here, and I'll say it, a blessing and a curse, right? Because how many times can you get all those guys? You could throw the ball to Malachi, Faze on JG, Will Pauling, every play, right? And trust if they're in one-on-one situations, they're going to make the play. But there's only one football. And so they got to continuously be unselfish, which they've done a tremendous job at doing that. But there's weapons. There's weapons in that wideouts room. We developed them. Coach Brown has developed that group. We've recruited that group. And again, we're going to need them all. And they just got to continuously be unselfish, which they've been, and understand at any moment that ball's coming their way and they're going to make a play.
Last question opportunity for Coach staying on the right side, Jackson Neal.
When it comes to these games, 1 point, 3 points, and they're turning into losses, what's the biggest thing that needs to change, or biggest areas that need to change to turn those from losses to wins in close matchups like that?
Well, I think I opened the press conference by saying the difference between winning and losing versus good teams is consistency. And when it matters the most, we got to make the play. Right? We got to do our job and execute. Like, that's the difference. When two really good teams play each other, it's who can be most consistent. And I can give you one play here, one play there, one play that will change the outcome of the game. Well, that's a sign of not being consistent, because on that play you didn't get your job done, right? On that play we didn't get it done, so we weren't consistent enough. So that's the difference between winning and losing these close games.
And then now with C.J. Carr having some really high moments, some low moments through these 2 games, just how have you kind of seen him respond now following these first 2 starts?
He's as solid as any individual I've been around. He is. This moment isn't too big for him. He has made some really, really great plays. There's plays in both games that he knows that he wishes he could do over. But, I mean, C.J. Carr is going to be an unbelievable player. He is doing great things for our offense right now. And but as I told him yesterday when I met with him, the ceiling I have for C.J. Carr is extremely high, and he's doing things right now that are really, really good. I'm talking about really good. And but sometimes he needs to hear how great he can be. I mean, he can be really special.
Coach, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.